Tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome to our webinar. It's great for me, Derek Wenmoth, to be able to share here with Lesley Pogai and Natasha from Birkdale. I see your names up there so we can recognise who's who. And the three of us had the privilege of travelling to the US about a month ago now to the FullScale conference and to visit some schools in San Francisco on the way home. And it was such a kind of uplifting event that I thought it would be a good idea to be able to just share some of our thoughts and ideas, particularly since it links with some of the work that Maury, who's also on the call, and I have been doing around leadership development, and with the stuff that we've been doing around the Ed Rising campaign. So it all links together. And this was an opportunity really to see some of those things in action. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is just invite Lesley and Tash to kind of briefly introduce themselves, and then I've got just a few questions which will act as a catalyst, and I'm going to sort of act as the MC and interject where I feel I've got something of value to add, which is probably not going to be very often. Anyway, Tash, do you want to just introduce yourself to those who may be not familiar with who you are, where you are?
Yeah, sure. Kia ora, ko Natasha Teinakore, tōku ingoa. Ko au te tumuaki o te kura o Birkdale. I'm the principal at Birkdale Primary School. We're on the North Shore. And we're a small school for Auckland anyway. I don't think we're that small compared to the rest of the country. And we're the only school on the North Shore that has a rūmaki or any Māori medium provision in mainstream. So it's something we're quite proud of, being able to, keep going and honour that pathway.
Kia ora, thanks, Tash.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
great. Lesley, can I turn just to you?
Sure. Kia ora, everybody. My name is Lesley Pogai, and I'm the Deputy Principal at Aberdeen Primary School. I've been at Aberdeen Primary School for over 30 years, so a long time, and we go from year 0 to year 6, and we're a big school. We've got about, at present, maybe about 750 students on roll. So nice to meet everyone.
Kia ora, thanks, Lesley. Now, listen, I'm just to set the scene, I think it's quite useful whenever you take an opportunity to participate in something like this, you always go away with expectations. There's sort of what do you anticipate? So I'm going to just invite Lesley and Natasha to just, I guess, talk a little bit about what they had expected or what made them decide to become a part of this trip. Lesley, I'll start with you since you're up the top with me at the moment.
Cool. So I was doing the 3 ARCA course with Maury and Derek at the beginning of the year, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to be with leaders and looking at myself as a leader and my journey. And when Derek and Maury talked about this opportunity to go to the States and this conference, I just felt like it was a really good time for me to broaden my view, my horizon, have a trip away somewhere with people so I could just have time out. I'm actually on sabbatical this term, so it worked out perfect and aligned with part of my sabbatical inquiry as well. So yeah, and I was just really motivated to do something different and see what's out there rather than just being so insular in what we see and do and hear.
So it's a fairly broad expectation. Thanks, Lesley. What about you, Tash?
Yeah, I didn't have many expectations actually, Derek, except that it was going to be amazing. That's all. No, I just really love the work that you do actually. You and Maury, both of you, really, I feel a lot of affinity with the things that you believe and the things that you share with leaders. And so I figured that if you're investing time into a trip like this, then there must be some worth to it. It was that or the principals conference, and I've done that, and I was quite eager to push myself outside of, my comfort zone a little bit and meet different people. So yeah, that was the main thing.
So let's pick up on that. So having had the chance now, that was your expectation, you went. Can you tell us what were one or two of the real high points of the trip for you?
Yeah. Well, I'd have to say I liked the opportunity to present. I thought that opportunity is not always available when you go to conferences overseas. So I felt like that was one that I really wanted to grab. It pushed me as a leader in lots of different ways, and international made me like right out of my comfort zone. And so then after doing that, I felt really yeah, really confident and proud of myself that I'd been, supported enough to be able to do it, but that I was able to even do it and have the opportunity. So that was a real high point. And also visiting the schools that we did over there, I really, really enjoyed. Um, they were just so different to anything. And I know we've got some similar aspects, but like Lesley said, I think sometimes you need to get outside your bubbles and your what you know. And it couldn't have been further from what I knew and my bubble, over there. So really lots of value in going international. Yeah.
Thanks, Tash. I'm going to dig a bit deeper on that, but come back to you, Lesley, first. What were your high points?
Some of the couple of things I thought about this was really the opportunity, kind of what Tash said, an opportunity to be with people from our own country and go overseas and be able to share about our own schools, our own place, our own journeys. And really, the conference is really different to how our conferences run. So, like the first night with the leading the journeys, that was really different, which I can share a little bit later. So, and even the keynote speakers at the beginning were young learners themselves. So there was a lot more opportunities for us to listen to the learners. Whereas conferences here, I feel like we're listening to adults, and that's not a bad thing, but it was really different. And I think for me, I got to listen, engage, and then I really just reflected, like with the other colleagues and the connections we made there were really one of the high points was there was so because we got to present, those that had been to our presentation had reached out to me on the app. And so at lunchtimes and stuff, we kind of met at places and talked and different, yeah. And when they'd see me, they'd connect and say, hey, I really love this about your presentation. Can we talk about this? So it made me then reflect and also not just about me, but about my space and the influences and the spaces that I get to influence as well. So yeah, opportunity and connections, I think were one of the high points for me.
And I think being able to present really propelled that, right? It gave you more opportunity than if you'd just gone along and been a part of it, as a participant. Yeah, I
So
agree.
let me just hone in on that presentation for a tick, because this is a conference that I've been going to for some years now. I've been a keynote at it and I've presented workshops. It's one that I feel has enriched me personally, professionally, in the ways that both Lesley and Natasha have fed back. And we were very privileged. Before I even knew that Lesley and Natasha were coming, I submitted an abstract, as you do in a typical Kiwi vague way, that we would tell some exciting stories about New Zealand schools. And Natasha and Lesley, they kind of underselling themselves to quite an extent, because their presentation, or our one, I only had the piece at the end. They really did it. Was the first presentation after the first keynote speaker, and so of course it had big number attending, and they really outdid themselves. It was for me, being a Kiwi in the room, watching the response from people there, and it made me appreciate just how deeply entrenched a lot of the behaviors, particularly when it comes to a lot of the ways in which we appropriate or include diverse learners in our schools, whether that's the neurodiversity, whether it's the cultural diversity and so forth. But it came through so strongly in what Natasha and Lesley did. And Lesley, I'm going to pick on you, and I've got one for you coming, Tash, because I was particularly intrigued. The part of your presentation that resonated so very, very strongly with people there was the concept that you introduced about being an ally when it came to being culturally responsive. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that for the people who are on the call.
Sure. I just really feel that I, as a woman that is not have cultural in terms of my children are Samoan, my husband's got Maori Samoan in him, but I'm a white woman that was raised with parents, but that it was really important that I shared my journey as a leader of being an ally for cultural leadership within my school. So my whole focus was about how do I, as a white woman that stands in a space that doesn't have a lived experience of that culture that some of our identities and our students do in our school, how do I ensure that I'm that ally that every child in our spaces feels seen, heard, and valued to then be able to connect and have learning success, whatever success looks like for them as a learner. So that's what my workshop was primarily around, and was able to share some examples that I had as well. And what was really cool was sitting in the audience that I didn't know at the time were leaders from Kamehameha in Hawaii, which have a total immersion Hawaiian language based as their school. And so when I spoke, that really resonated with them. And then we were able to connect after that. So, yeah, that was what my presentation was about.
Thanks, Lesley. And it was a stunner, I tell you that. And Tash, the thing that sticks out for me from what you said, where I saw a real resonance, was around the community-driven transformation picture, which was a big theme at the conference, that schools can only go so far unless they really bring their community, their parents, their whānau, and so forth with them. And Tash, I thought the story that you told of the journey at Birkdale was particularly pertinent, and it resonated very strongly with some of the people in the room. Do you just want to talk briefly about that?
Yeah. So I shared as a part of the workshop the work that we'd done when I first joined the school, and we were, like lots of schools, trying to figure out if who we were was still who we were. It had been formed a long time ago, and so we went back to the community, and I spoke around some of the different ways that we'd engaged with the community to make sure that we weren't missing voices in that feedback. But then I think more importantly, once we'd collected all of that data, which I think makes it different to other processes I'd seen in other schools at other times, was having those same people or a representation of those same stakeholders then help make sense of the data as a group as well. So it wasn't left to the school to make sense of it, because like I said in the presentation, I feel like whoever makes sense of the data controls the narrative of whatever that data is going to tell. We can see that with the government a little bit. So, it's really important to get those same people back around the table and I just gave them back the raw data. I resisted every urge to start sorting it myself, because then already I'm starting to filter out using my own bias. And yeah, it was just really, really insightful seeing whānau members and other members of our community sort information and analyze it and synthesize it in a very, very different way to, I think, how educators traditionally organize and put links together. So, yeah, a really powerful exercise. And I think being able to share that and then realizing that it actually did resonate with so many people, you felt that kind of global connection, like we're all in education and we're all doing this together and we all share similar highs and similar lows. And this particular conference is kind of on the fringes, because when I went, I thought, God, is this what American schools are like? I never thought I'd say I want to teach in America. But then I found out, no, that's not what American schools are like. They're very much on the fringes as well. There's a lot of them because it's a big country. But it was really, really great to be able to connect with people who are trying to make a difference in their small patch of the world as well.
Thanks, Tash. And I think the part of your story that really stood out, and I had personally some feedback about this, was it was like the aha that many people in the group had, that whole idea of consulting with a community and involving community doesn't stop just by doing the surveys and asking them their view. The way you unpacked how you involved them in the meaning making that went on was something that I had conversations with some around. I'm sure you did as well. So I'm gonna just dwell a little bit then on some of those keynotes that you talked about, that you heard, and other workshop presentations. And I wonder if each of you might just share some of the thoughts. Like Tash, you just mentioned the group we were with were quite progressive educators, and so we were seeing the stuff that was highly desirable or highly thought after, I guess, from our perspective. We'll start with you. What were some of the things that you saw that perhaps you've had the opportunity to reflect on and think, yes, that really either affirms what you're doing or is something you'd like to progress with?
I really enjoyed a lot of the technology, future focused, using technology as tools in education. I'm a baby there still, and haven't done as much as I really would have liked to have. And so being able to I went to a lot of different AI inspired workshops, but they were all really different. They were all approaching using AI in all its different tools and forms. And I enjoyed seeing the way that these really innovative companies and people were using it to do some really amazing stuff. A lot around their graduate profiles, and tracking the achievement and successes of those. But even with their teachers, coaching their teachers, there was this really cool one with using an AI tool. God, I can't remember the specifics now, but I've got it all in my notes, and I wrote my notes so I can go back to them because this stuff doesn't stick in my head. But yeah, ways of using AI to coach teachers as a model. And Derek's got some fantastic connections as well. So I remember one of the conversations we had with one of your friends, Derek, with how they were using that technology for professional development and stuff. It's just, it gets you excited and it gets you out of your day-to-day rut kind of, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what I want to do. I want to try this stuff, and so that's why it's really important to be a part of the conversation. So
Thanks.
yeah, I really liked the technology AI parts of
Thanks,
the
Tash.
workshop.
What about you, Lesley? What was top of mind for you and what you saw and heard?
What I loved about this conference was the different ways that it was presented. So we'd start with keynote speakers, which were students, and more of a conversation. And then we'd have the evening time where we had a really cool DJ with music playing and three amazing people, including Dr. Leona, who was one of the small girls that went through to the first school with white children, spoke, and then we danced. So it wasn't just the normal conference, but I also loved, like, I didn't realize this at first, so this is a learning if you go, but they have like these round tables, and it's like a big room and you're all sitting around table, but it's an interactive approach. So one of them I went to was looking at designing a cap. So here was a student, they looked at a school and they said, okay, this school has been doing students presenting their own work and driving their own program in English, I think it was. And this is when they're having issues. How would we support the school to make changes? Because this is the problems they're having. So it was really like, here's what we're doing. This is what they're doing. This is where they're having problems. And around the table, we all brainstormed way to correct things, which what you don't realize is you're actually sitting there going, oh, we do something like this. And I can suggest this for another school, but what about my space? So I found it hard at first getting used to that kind of engagement as a workshop, but it was really cool because there were all sorts of walks sitting around that table, from primary to high school to consultants to superintendents, that all had a voice around student-led learning and how can we support that school. So I really love that. Some of the things that stood out for me that I'm going to relook at is I heard one of the keynote speakers say, move from resilience to redesign. And for me, I wrote that down because sometimes like we've got to be resilient with change. We've got to be, we've got to build resilience in our staff. And as leaders, we've got to be resilient. But actually, how do we implement redesign and design with our current changes in our curriculum rather than just resilience? So there were like pivotal things that I heard that I took down from notes. But yeah, I think one of the cool things about the conference is you could interact in different ways. So another workshop I went to was around AI. Another one I went to, there were so many choices, but they were also presented differently. And I think that's a really cool thing too. Like I like that.
Thanks, Lesley. Look, I'm going to pause from asking you questions from me at the moment and just give an opportunity. We've got more to go in the conversation, but there may be other questions that people are dying to ask online. And I forgot to mention, either you could put your hand up or put something into the chat, or like right now, I'm going to give you a chance to take your mic off mute and just ask that question if there's anything that's top of mind for you. Madeline, it looks like you're ready to go.
Yeah. Fascinated to hear about coaching teachers with the support of AI. If you have your notes, or if you want to catch up via email or have a chat, or I can pop over and see you. I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah.
Is that something that you are doing currently in your work, Madeline, or just you're in the same place looking?
Yeah, we do a whole lot of teacher coaching in a whole lot of different ways. And I am always looking for ways to make life easier. And I think, AI does that in so many other ways. And if we can strengthen our practice with a little bit of tech help, then I am all for that. Interestingly, I was at a conference last night, and one person was talking about global megatrends in education, and one of them is he said hybrid mentoring, which is mentoring via AI, and I'm like, okay, I've got to know more about like what. Yeah, so it's just it makes me so intrigued and so curious. So.
Well,
If you
there's a
can
good
find
connection.
anything now, great. Otherwise, let's talk further.
Yeah, there's a good connection to follow up after the call. Thanks, Madeline.
Yeah.
That's great. Was there anyone else likely to have the call? Now's your chance, or as I say, the chat's open and I'm monitoring that. Well, look, I'll come back to Lesley and Tash, because one of the themes, and I think Tash, you touched on it just before, one of the big things that is happening across many schools in the US, and it was very prominent at the conference, was this whole idea of a graduate profile, of how we actually measure success of learners. So there were many opportunities to kind of look at some of the different things that schools were doing. So I'm quite keen to hear your perspectives as people active in leadership in schools about any of the takeaways that you had with regards to that whole area. Tash, can I perhaps go to you to start?
Yeah. Well, what struck me was there was a similarity between them all, but they were all different. And we know that, our local curriculum drives those graduate profiles a lot of the time. But it reaffirmed to me, particularly being in the current educational climate, and we talked about it a lot actually, because a lot of it was unfolding while we were overseas. And I was at this very progressive conference, and I had this like tension between, what I was seeing in the news versus what I was being exposed to at this conference. But I think that's why it's so important to keep being a part of conversations and groups like these, because they remind you of what anchors you and what really is important. So so it forced me to get back into that's right. Like we do want to be able to show success in lots of different ways. I mean, I loved going to that school and how they, how did they group people? It was by not self-management, autonomy. Yeah. So that's how the groups were based. And I'd never ever seen that before. And I don't even know how that would play out, but it's not even really that particular idea. It's that there are so many different ways to do it, and it pushes you and it challenges you and it keeps forcing you to think about things. And yeah, I really loved that. It really just got me thinking, going, huh, do I need to look at something back at my school? Which I think was really the crux of it all, was the value of being able to hear these ideas and then think back at what you're doing at your school. And it really, because our graduate profile had like come to a steaming halt last year when we came up against our new curriculum stuff that we had to implement. We just didn't have enough time. And I went away going, no, this is important work. We've got to get back on this and make sure that we follow it and see it through to the end. So, reinvigorated my conviction. Yeah, I really enjoyed being a part of that wider network to remember what was important, and just seeing that there's no right way of doing stuff. That's what I really liked about the graduate profiles I saw.
Thanks, Tash. Do you want to pick up on that, Lesley? Move forward.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the diversity of graduate profiles, because it's a word that's put around a lot. Like, you hear graduate profile, graduate profile. What does that really mean? What is a graduate profile? What is important in a graduate profile? So for me, it just posed more questions, because, at our school we have our values, but our values align our learning and our behavior and the way we do things in our school. So for me, it was a questioning moment too, like Tash, like, what does that mean around what a graduate profile means for our space? What was quite interesting, we went to Oakland, and we went to a school downtown Oakland, which, since leaving Oakland, I realized how downtown Oakland that was. I didn't really think I understood it while I was there, until I left, and I told people, they're like, do you realize? And I was like, But when we went to the school at downtown Oakland, I thought that they sent us through some of their stuff, and you could see up on walls the expectations of this for their school. You could see the learners, and how the learning for that space was related to that context. And I think, like Tasha's saying, it's being careful that when we create the graduate profile, that we just keep true to what's important around, our school we're developing lifelong learners. So what does that mean for our profile? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know how to kind of word it properly, but one of the things I remember hearing was, someone said this, and I took this down, and I've been collating notes for next year for myself, not because I have time. So you do more to gain capacity, you do better to improve effectiveness, and you do new to expand possibility. And
Lesley,
it's kind of a mantra I'm going to kind of use.
Can I get you to repeat that, Lesley? Because you just cut out in the middle of that. Can you repeat those three things?
Yeah, so you do more to gain capacity, you do better to improve effectiveness, but you do new to expand possibility. And for me, I can't remember who said it, but it was one in the notes that I took, it'll be improperly. And for me, I kind of took that night and wrote it down and thought, okay, so what more are we doing? Is it to gain capacity? What are we doing better? Is it to improve effectiveness? What are we doing new? Are we doing new just to do new? Is it because we're expanding possibility rather than staying where we are because it's easy and comfortable? And like we said, it was pretty progressive, what we saw and heard, but we know there's the reason why behind it. So when that's in the middle of the circle is, why are we doing that? Then why are we doing more? Why are we doing better? And what are we doing? And what are we doing new? So for me, I've been that kind of stood out for me. And it's not rocket science stuff you're hearing all the time, but you might be hearing in a different way that grounds you to think, okay, I need a pause. And I know term 4 was crazy and people aren't pausing right now because it's revved up. But as through the holidays for me, going overseas, seeing others, seeing new possibilities is pivotal. So that's kind of something that I'm going to take on board from the learning that I heard there.
Thanks, Lesley. And just keeping that ball rolling and kind of a concluding question around the actual conference per se, but it's around leadership. Tash, you raised that idea around starting to think about what you would do next. And Lesley, you were just talking about the same thing. Both of you have been involved in the program that Maury and I ran around leading for change, leading for transformation, where some of those ideas were, I'm sure familiar to you when you got to the conference. But I'm just wondering whether both of you could think about specific parts of what you learned over there that relate to leadership, to how and what you do around leading change, whether that's leading the new initiative or perhaps bringing the people with you, all those facets of leadership. I'll leave it open as to which one of you might want to start that off, because it's a pretty broad question.
Yeah. And I didn't go to any specific leadership workshops, but I did see a lot of leaders sharing, and what it did for my leadership is they're just such good examples. So I see someone who's breaking the norm again, or breaking a barrier, or trying something new, and it reminds me. And I think over all of this whole experience was just really grounding. It was pushing boundaries, but for me it was grounding, because it was just once again anchoring me as a leader to the things that I'd in some time forgotten a little bit, got too busy to remember, felt like I needed to leave for a little bit while I spent energy on the loudest voice. But it just grounded me again, hearing this stuff, being inspired, listening to those really inspirational leadership stories in other fields as well that weren't all education, well, kind of linked to education, but people doing courageous things when the situation is hard or challenging. And some of us might be feeling that at the moment in education. And so it kind of gives you a bit of hope and reminds you of what's important. And I really appreciated just remembering that again. I've come back just remembering, right, our graduate profile is important to us. We put a lot of work into this. This is what our families want. We need to get back to that basic for us. And so that's, it's really informed our next 3-year strategic plan, and yeah, just regrounded me.
And I think the thing I heard you saying just then, Tasha, was that concept of courage. It's about being prepared to step out and lead in those very important kinds of areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Lesley? What's this changed or affirmed for you in terms of your view of leadership and your role?
I think it's just reaffirming how I feel around my leadership as a servant of children or position. I really believe that authentically as myself as a leader. And one of the key things that I was reminded of too is high support and high expectation go hand in hand. Yeah. So when you have, and we quite often forget, and especially in the change we're going through, what is the high support we need to give for our high expectation for ourselves as leaders? What's the support I need as a leader or as our leadership team? What do our middle leaders need? What do our students need? What do our children, what do our parents need? What does the community need? It has to go hand in hand. So for me, it's looking next year of what is the support we need to give for high expectation. So what is our expectation, and then what is the support? And we're not going to know that unless we're actively, continually gathering voice. You can't just say we gathered voice and we've done it and we're done, and it doesn't have to be massive. It can be, today I'm in this classroom, I'm talking to the learners, I'm at the front gate talking to our parents. What do you know? What have you heard? Talking at staff meeting, allowing the time for staff when we're already under pressure to have time just to talk and find out what's needed. So that was just really timely. When I listened to everything that was going on, it's continual. We all say I have high moral purpose. Well, that's a big word that gets put out. What does your moral purpose and my moral purpose look like, right? But we can all understand what our expectations are, and then what is the support, because different people, different students, different leaders all need different support. So I know in our space next year, we've got some new team leaders. So for their support, what does that look like? New parents to our school, changes. So that's just a really good timely reminder.
That's great. That's great. Listen, we're just pushing on a little. You've already, both of you, mentioned the schools that we visited in San Francisco. In the end, we only had time to be able to fit 2 school visits in, and they were both very different schools to anything that we might experience elsewhere. But it was that sort of opportunity for contrast. And as was mentioned, one of them was organized in such a different way, where rather than having, age-based classes and this sort of thing, the students were grouped according to their level of autonomy. I wonder whether I could just ask each of you to just highlight for me some of the things that really stood out for you in the visits to these 2 schools. Each of them were quite different. One was an elementary, the other was a secondary. Perhaps to keep you on there, Lesley, and then I'll come back to Tash. What were some of the things that you saw and experienced that impressed you?
Well, firstly, the first thing that's amazing and what we don't experience is closed-in buildings. So no grass, no playgrounds, no open spaces. So, and the one in San Francisco was locked doors, and in Oakland, security on them. So that already you're confronted with a different situation, and rightfully so. No judgment here, apps at all, And then as you entered, one of the things that I felt like you feel in every school is warmth and welcoming, and students highly engaged in their learning. One of the other big things is low numbers. It was a dream, like absolute dream numbers. Like I think we worked out it was like 1 to 8 or 9 in some of them. So in the one in San Francisco, they would do autonomy learning around their values, around the skills of the learners, and then they would group accordingly for academic learning. But all of that learning was student driven, collaborative, and then I kind of align it when you think of New Zealand, workshop situations with teachers and one-on-one time and breakout spaces. And then the one and it was lovely, like the kids were great, but very, very, very different. And the one in downtown in Oakland it was high school. I think one of the key things that I felt in that space was low numbers again, which you would need to have because it was a pretty lots of high needs within there. There was a lot of high need learners in that school, but low numbers. But what I loved about that school too, which was easier to see than the primary school one, was a lot around that the Envisions schools processes, the things they did in the rooms. It was very, very different, but very cool to be a part of.
Thanks. Do you want to pick up on what you saw, Tash?
Yeah, I really liked at the high school how their graduate profile had been the product of many iterations, and I don't know when they started it, but I remember that stuck with me. Sorry, can you hear our bell?
No, it's good.
Oh,
keep going.
okay. All right. It's terrible. The kids chose it. It's a song I don't like. Anyway, so it just struck with me because we've done all this work on a graduate profile. It can feel finished really quickly because you do so much work to get to that point that you're like, oh, I can't possibly revise it anytime soon. We're done. Like we've done it. But they said, they tweak it regularly. I think, annually they'll keep reviewing it. And what we saw all around the school, was the product of many reviews and many iterations. And I liked that idea. I liked the idea that it was still living that profile because, children and communities come and go and it still has to be relevant. So that just kind of piqued something in me to keep thinking about. And the other thing at the primary school, you can't go in and go, oh, great, we couldn't have taken that model and just put it in our school. There were lots of different things that were different fundamentally. But I think I really loved the way that they viewed that autonomy leveling. I just thought it was a really unique and a unique way of looking at the skills and the dispositions children need. What I really liked about that, though, was that they didn't just put them into groups and then leave them and hope that they picked up agency by osmosis. they had a real structured learning.
Just lost Tash. That school bell's doing its trick.
As well in New Zealand.
Tash, we just lost that last minute or that last 30 seconds. Can you just repeat what you were saying? Sorry.
What was the last thing you heard me say? I was just saying how I wasn't sure they moved from highly dependent learners to independent learners through a scaffolded learning sequence that is also reviewed, and they've done it themselves. That program, it's not a curriculum that exists anywhere. They've created it themselves. But I liked the structure of from 5 years old, children are learning how to be agentic and a part of their learning from a really young age, and that it's guided and supported. I don't think we do that as well in New Zealand. We talk a lot about learner agency, and we all know it's important, but I haven't seen as much high scaffolding of what it looks like to move from 5 years old or really young all the way through. These are the things you need to do to meet it. And they dedicate time to it every morning. I really liked that too, that what they viewed as important was given the time and that curriculum space. And so it just got me thinking about how we scaffold our learners into becoming more agentic. So those two things stuck out for me in both the schools we saw.
Thanks, Tash.
Also, Tash, can I just, was it also, my mind might be a bit blurry, but also what I really liked is the students could say when they thought they had developed those skills and were ready to go to independent.
Yeah, they did.
You know, so it wasn't just like we're ticking it off and you do this. There was the student agency and, okay, I can do all of that now. I think I'm ready to.
You just reminded me. That was the other thing I liked, Derek, at the high school. And I thought, we could do that for year sixes maybe. What did they call those talks that they had to do? They had to...
the presentations, eh?
Yeah, what was that presentation? So they had two, every 3 years, they did it was an argument or something or a debate or something on why they had to show how they'd met the graduate profile, and they presented it. And it was a really big time for students. Families were invited, people who were important to them from the community. A panel watched it, and this panel moderated a couple together to make sure that children were receiving the same kind of feedback. But they took it really seriously. It was a part of coming of age, moving into the next part of the school. They had to show how they'd met the profile and its dispositions and stuff. I really liked that idea, and was trying to figure out how we could do a similar primary school version, to celebrate their time at school after working for 6 years on this profile. Then how can we showcase that in an age appropriate way? So yeah, actually that was pretty mind-blowing. I don't know how I forgot that, but see, that's why you have to keep checking in, right? Because you forget the things that you see and hear.
Yeah, and we could probably keep peeling back the layers lots and lots. I think important, just to relate for those who are in the call, the two schools we visited were recommended by people we had connections with through at the conference and so forth. One was a charter school, one was a private school. So that's what made them unique and different. So we weren't looking at them so much from the perspective of being typical of America, but they were being looked at for exactly the reasons that Lesley and Natasha have talked about what can happen if you allow those different ways of thinking and those different ways of operating to become a reality. And once you get hooked into that sort of thinking, then you can start to address the realities of, well, our numbers are a bit higher. How could we do that? And as you heard Tash say, well, that worked there, but the essence of it could be something we appropriate here. There we go. I'll just pause quickly in case there are any other questions coming through. There's nothing I can see in the chat yet, but hand up or whatever if you want. What I want to ask, just as we sort of round off and bring it to a close, I must say, by the way, before I do that, we were shameless in presenting them with each school with a copy of Agency by Design as a handbook that could perhaps be used when it comes to that scaffolding and so forth. It was great to get some of their feedback on that. One of the things I want to ask Lesley and Tash is just about their thought about traveling to this sort of event as we did as a group, and the advantage that they saw, the benefit they saw of being together as a group. And of course, our group was just the three of us, but actually once we got there, I introduced them to the groups that I've been a part of over there. So our groups expanded a little, which included even a trip out one night to a basketball match. But from the point of view of an educator from New Zealand going over on this learning experience, you could have done it on your own. What do you think were the special benefits of being able to be going as a group?
It's that sense making with others in real time. Because look, I've just forgotten some of it now. I'm going through, having to review my notes. Things don't stay in. We get busy, we get back home, and you get swept up back in life. But in the real time, you can make sense of it right then, and you can challenge each other. And we all went to different ones as well, so we could share some of the things that we'd seen in different workshops. We didn't do it on purpose. We went to what we were interested in. But, I found it interesting listening to some of the things that Derek and Lesley had gone to and vice versa. So yeah, I think it's definitely stronger learning when you're with a group.
Would you agree, Lesley?
Yeah, and I also think because we're coming from a system that's the same in New Zealand and we're going to an international destination, it makes it easier to then talk to each other and go, what does that look like in New Zealand? Or what do you do at your school? Or this is what I do at my school. So how could I make that work? What I also loved, or we were fortunate to go with Derek. So if you want to go on a trip, go with Derek because he has a very broad group of connections and people who are lovely and make you feel so welcome. In fact, Tash and I, at a break, snuck off and went to Cafe Du Monde to get beignets with them, which is just to show that how kind and welcoming they were to us. And we talked about shop stuff while you're there as well and about their spaces. And we learned about one of the wonderful principals in Arkansas who has her students doing TED Talks and things like that, that's the difference. You're there learning about international spaces in education, but you're connecting back with your roots about what we're facing here in New Zealand. And going with a group too, like I didn't know Tash before I left, I knew Derek somewhat, but we actually had a great time. We got on well, and it's another connection we've now created for our own resources now. Like if I want to say, hey, Tash, can you give us information about this? You've created some lifelong friends as well. So definitely going as a group is more beneficial and fun.
And fun, of course. I must tell one little story. We were in the middle of San Francisco, and there we came across hundreds of cars whizzing around, taxis all over the place with no driver. It's part of a big experiment taking place there, and Lesley and Tash thought this would be fun to try. So I think it's probably one of those things that perhaps on our own we mightn't have done, but with the three of us, we downloaded the app, registered, got a car to drive to where we were, had a little bit of trouble getting in until we realized that on the app there was a button that says open the door, and the handle suddenly opened up and let us get in, and then we took a drive. So that sort of added to the experience. So it was educational in the broadest sense. So a parting comment from both of you, because I am thinking about taking another tour next year if anyone's interested, and so people who are maybe watching this clip will get that in an email. Next year, this conference is going to be in Indiana. In Indianapolis, which is going to be really interesting because I've worked in some schools there, and I've got a fairly amazing new initiative that I've been party to, which that is this first state in the US to have a state network of micro schools being established. So we could be in for some interesting stuff. So if another opportunity came up and other people were looking at it, Tash or Lesley, what would you tell someone about the opportunity to go? Lesley.
Look, I think we're always quick to fill everybody else's baskets first, and we quite often don't think about ourselves. You know, I'm a mum, I've got 4 children, things cost, it's time, it's money, I get all that. But if you want to invest in yourself and have an opportunity to go overseas and have some space away, it's a great opportunity. I would be keen for Indianapolis. My niece teaches in micro school in Arizona. So afterwards, I extended my trip and went to Arizona, and she's a micro school, runs a micro school herself. So I get what that is. Look, I think like anything, a trip is what you make of it. And if you go with a positive attitude, if you go with the right people, with the right connections and the right attitude, you'll have a great experience. One of the things is, yes, it is a conference. And I must admit, for 4 days, our head was boggled. But you are able to fit in other things. We did go to an NBA game. We did get beignets. We did go to Pier 39. We did not sleep. And we may be exhausted afterwards. But you just, I think it's an opportunity to learn from others, be connected. We met other people there for other things. There's so many other amazing things that happened on our trip that you didn't hear about today. So if it's something you want to do, then make it happen for yourself, because it's worthwhile. I don't regret any minute of it. In fact, I felt when I came home and told people like, they did that all in 7 days, I was like, yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't think I slept. But there were no regrets. It was amazing. And I was really blessed to travel with Tash and Derek, who we're very different personalities, but that's a good thing. Because you're different, you get out of your comfort zone. So one of the journey nights that I was talking about that Derek came to, and it started at like, I can't remember what time it started, with churros and cookies and drinks and a band and DJ, and you heard these life stories. Well, Tash and I were the last to leave, and we danced away, and Derek scooted off. But it was really cool. So there's something there for everybody. You can make it work. It's amazing.
Just reminded me of me trying to navigate Derek while he was driving on the other side of the road. That was fun, eh, Derek?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
You love that
I
navigation.
may have had some anxiety during that trip, but we survived.
Yeah, look, I would just add, I agree with everything Lesley said. I just think sometimes you need to leave home to appreciate what you've got at home. And it's a bit of a cliche, but it can help you understand your own context better when you get out of it. And America couldn't be more different, I think, in some respects from some of the things that we do in New Zealand. But I really appreciated the difference. It felt very American. Like you knew you weren't you weren't in New Zealand anymore when the DJ started playing after each speaker. But it was good though. It's really broadened my own cultural horizons and challenged my own assumptions about what I thought education could or should be. So yeah, I love the experience. I like to see what's possible when schools can be brave and redesign systems. So yeah, fully recommend it.
Well, look, thank you both so very, very much. And you can see by how clearly they articulated so many of these ideas, most of which wasn't rehearsed, how well they were received in the presentation over in the FullScale conference. Watch out for then more news of what's coming. We'd like to make this possible because I think it is really enriching and an opportunity to bring that experience to the fore for people, if you're thinking about that. My sincere thanks, Natasha, to you, to Lesley. It was a pleasure and privilege traveling with both of you. You filled my kete as much as anything else, just for those same reasons. So thank you also for so generously giving this time today, and for all those who are listening in. So we'll close it off there, and thank you very much. Ka kite anō.
Ka kite.